I thought, if I go into private practice, am I ever going to see like my colleagues and see other therapists? And I've met so many people that I wouldn't have met if I hadn't been in private practice. And that's been awesome. And you need to, I always say to people, like, you really need to know other people who are very different than you and who think differently and who do EFT and somatic and things that you are not trained in. And because these people are going to be so helpful, and you're going to seem so much more knowledgeable if you know when to refer somebody to somebody who does what you don't do, and you have to feel completely okay with that.
This is Therapist Clubhouse, a podcast for private practice entrepreneurs. I'm Annie Schusler. This week, I'm talking to Maryellen Mullin, a private practice entrepreneur in San Francisco. Listen as we dive into how she's built a diversified practice. She loves doing lots of things in her business, and her enthusiasm is contagious. Welcome, Maryellen. Thank you so much for being here.
Oh, it's great to be with you, Annie, especially since it's Friday.
Yeah. And I know we were just talking about all the different stuff that you do, and I want to dive into how you don't just do one thing in your business. So can you tell me, we went over like 3 or 4 really important things that you do in your business, and kind of a frosting on the cake is that you're training a therapy dog right now.
Yes, Dublin. Yes.
Yeah. So you do family work using the Gottman method. And of course you do couples work doing the Gottman method. And then also you have something called messy parenting. Will you tell us, let's start off with you telling us about that.
Sure. So several years ago, a woman approached me when I was working in the school district and said, I have an idea to do workshops together. And her name's Eleanor Scott. And she said, we're going to do these messy parenting workshops. And I just looked at her and I'm like, well, who are you? And where did you come from? Anyway, it's a small world. One of her best friends is a woman I went to college with. And she had come to one of my workshops before at the school where I was working in San Francisco. So I said, sure, why not? This sounds like fun. And she does improv and she's an actor. And her idea was to help parents tell their story about those moments that you find embarrassing, sometimes shameful, and bring some light into it so that it's actually funny. So my piece of it was then providing strategies for maybe avoiding or managing some of those messy moments a little bit better the next time. But the real crux of it was really helping parents feel emotionally understood and that they weren't alone in some of these terrible moments that you have that, you sort of say, I can't believe I'm this person that just did X, Y, and Z with my child and lost it. And it happens to everybody. So we started doing those together and we ran them, and we have had groups who've come and, asked us to come and present. And that's been a lot of fun. Doing those. Eleanor's gone on to do a lot of her own new projects, but I've tried to continue providing those workshops. And usually it's better if an organization has me come and do it. So that's how I do them now.
Okay. What kind of organizations are they ideal for?
I'd say any kind of parent group. So a school might have me come and do a messy parenting workshop, a church where they, maybe kids are in classes and then the parents meet and I'll go and talk to the parents. So any type of group where parents are getting together, I've even gone to somebody's home and they've gathered 10 people, 10 parents from their students' class. And, we've talked about a certain issue.
Nice. And when you're getting in contact with a school or a church, do you usually approach them and let them know what you have to offer, or do they approach you a lot of times? They approach
me. Usually there's been a parent in that organization or that school who's seen me do something else, and then they introduce me and ask if, I can be brought in to give a workshop at that organization. So that's been really nice. And I've done a lot of, independent and public schools here in San Francisco, and really enjoy working in the community and bringing it to a larger audience. I think parents feel very isolated in general between work and managing after-school activities and getting dinner together and travel. It's a lot. It's a lot for the modern family.
Yeah, the way we have things set up is really that you're supposed to do everything on your own. You're supposed to have like this little nuclear family that can take care of everything. And it doesn't really work that way very well.
No, it doesn't work that way very well. But I think what happens is a lot of parents don't have as much time to do what they'd like to do, like socialize with other parents. And so they end up feeling isolated. So when schools actually and churches, groups host these kind of things, whether it's me or someone else, they actually provide a forum for parents to start networking and seeing familiar faces. So I do team building activities when we first meet. And I'm always shocked how many parents don't know other parents in the room, and they're all at the same school or the same church. And one of the things that I've been asked for by one group specifically is, can you do more of that team building? Because we really enjoyed meeting each other.
Cool.
Yeah.
And tell us about another workshop that you're doing. I know you're doing something next week, and then by the time this comes out, that will be the past, but you're going to be doing it again in the future.
Right. So kind of under the umbrella of messy parenting, I've been doing a lot of mother-daughter workshops for years. And I also run an adolescent girls group. And something unique about this group is I run it for 3 years. So I stay with them sometimes from 5th grade through 8th grade. And they're small intentional groups, providing, self-esteem and leadership skills and social emotional development through the middle school year. So, and I see a lot of teens in my practice with their parents. So I had this idea. I have a friend who has a company where she does cosmetics. Her name's Christina Choi, and she's here in San Francisco. And I went to one of her workshops actually for myself. I'm like, I need a summer look, And what struck me about her was how real she was about. She had a whole different kind of thought process around makeup being an accessory for your unique beauty, and that it is something that kind of draws out the best in you. So I talked to her after her workshop and said, I'd love to get moms and daughters in here, and we could talk about inner beauty and external beauty, but how that really comes from the inside. So we've coined this workshop Inside Outside Beauty, and we're going to be doing it on Friday, and we're going to be doing it again next Friday, and again when probably after this podcast comes out. And our whole goal is to get moms and daughters focused on the positive things about their strengths, that they can see strengths in each other, and then from that comes outer beauty, because that's what you bring to your life. And that makeup is really a part of life. It's like, you go up, you get up, you put on a certain color, it makes you feel a certain way. And sometimes you go out and you want to feel good about, having a certain look, and you don't have to do a lot to get that. And you don't have to put a mask on. So our whole thing is about really being yourself, enhancing what you have, and being comfortable. And I have this thing about being fearless about having self-esteem. Be fearless to have self-esteem. You don't have to apologize that you have positive self-esteem. So I really want girls and moms to learn that.
I'm thinking too, there's an interesting dynamic with mothers and daughters. I don't have a daughter, I have a mother though, but I know there's something that happens in those adolescent years where so many daughters are having a big reaction to their mother's appearance. Whether it's like, oh my gosh,
embarrassed, or they're
I hope I don't look like you someday. Or the opposite, like, oh, you're prettier than me. Like there's just such a dynamic there that I think that's brilliant that you're working with them together.
Yes. And trying to break through that, because I really believe that all teenagers, boys and girls, all adolescents, it is okay for them to love their parents. And I think there's a message in society that they need to separate and individuate in more than the way that they need to. And it's about changing that relationship. And the Gottmans talk a lot about this in their research around couples staying together, which is that contempt is the number one predictor of relationship ending. And when I explain the 4 horsemen to teenagers, these are 4 things that everyone does in conflict, research-based coded behaviors that the Gottmans figured out: criticism, defensiveness, contempt, and stonewalling. Contempt is a complete lack of appreciation for someone else. You cross that line and you go there and you say the big mean thing that's not true, that you wish you'd never said. But sometimes you do wish, you mean it, because you feel that kind of emotion behind it. And teenagers can identify with contempt, and they can sit in family therapy and say, actually, I do that a lot. And it names it. And then you can start working from a place of building a culture of appreciation. So, my goal is to really, moms and daughters could leave that and have a bad moment, but the point is they just spent a half an hour talking about positive things. And I think it's about increasing those moments in those relationships. And you're going to have messy moments, but it's about the repair that you do. And a lot of people spend a lot of time watching very negative things on the news. It's hard not to turn on the news and feel sad about things. And they spend time kind of thinking we are where our brains are. We shortcut. We're very analytical and logical. Positive thinking takes so much effort. And so we have to be very intentional about that, especially I think in those adolescent teen years with that relationship between parents and kids. And what my intern taught me something, she's an associate now, but my intern taught me something when she first came on. And she said, I told a parent to shower her kid with love. And I thought to myself, that was brilliant. That was brilliant. And, I've really started to pick up on that more and say, why don't you shower your adolescent with love? Why don't you spend 2 weeks doing that instead of telling them everything they're doing wrong? And it makes a big difference. And I think sometimes simple advice that we forget as we go along in our career really is helpful. Like we get so stuck in what's the behavior and what's going on. But really, some very simple things like being loving and being positive go a long way.
Yeah. And I know my 14-year-old who is editing this right now knows that I can fall into maybe not being critical, like directly critical, but always having like, have you done this? Are you working on this? Like we only have a minute. Let me, check on your homework and have you done this and that and the other thing? And I just know that is a habit that like, that's not what I want the majority of my interactions with my kids to be.
Right. And giving him more autonomy. And but I think that comes out of being the one used to doing that for so many years. I mean, around the age of 8 or 9, I get a lot of parents who say, like, I don't understand why my kids won't do anything. They feel like they're bad. They won't. And I said, well, that's because you've taught them that you'll always do it with that for them. So if you teach them independent skills and you teach them the methodology and you coach them instead of doing for them, you're going to get there. But I think that a lot of parents, are busy and they're just trying to check off the list and they forget that kids are learning to check off their own lists.
Yeah.
And that's just, I think, a part of growing up too. It's, having that mature high school student or 8th grader who's ready to, make that bridge and be like, I got this, mom.
Yeah. And that we need to interact in other ways.
Yeah. In different ways. And it's about maturing your relationship with your child, which is hard, but it's one of the best ways to build self-esteem in kids is to teach them how to be independent.
And so you're working with people a bunch of different ways. Like have you been through the whole Gottman?
Yeah.
So you're Gottman certified.
So I'm actually in my final stages of the certification working with my consultant, but I've done all the training. Yeah.
I went through that process and it's so rich. It's so rich. And so you're doing all of that work and you're applying it not just to couples, but to families. And then you also do this work with, mothers and daughters, and you have an intern. So I just keep noticing like you really like to work in different ways. And to not be stuck in just one way of working. Has that always been the case? Or did you find at one point like you needed to start diversifying?
I think so. Like when you're saying that, I think back to, I think I remember when I was 12 years old and I read a Babysitter's Club book and I went and put together a babysitter box. And I said to my mom, I'm ready to babysit. And I had a box full of all these activities. And she said, I guess you are ready to go babysit. And then, I think through middle school and high school and college, different clubs and activities on top of, but I think my parents modeled that. They all were always doing volunteer work and giving back or, teaching. My dad used to teach Sunday school classes and my brother sang in the choir. And I think that that's just what I saw modeled. My mom did a lot of volunteer work. And, I think when you see that modeled, you just kind of think that that's the normal way that life is, right?
Yeah.
And we're all like that. My father had passed away when I was younger, but when I think about what my brother does and what my mom does, we all have a lot of varied interests and do a lot of different things. So I think for me, it's normal. I think to other people, it might seem overwhelming.
But it keeps you, because we all have to find our sweet spot with that and, find what combination of things is going to keep us energized rather than drained. So for you, if you were just doing one thing, you would probably feel drained.
Drained. Exactly. Yeah. And I know that I'm an ambivert. So the idea of just sitting with clients the whole week to me feels very isolating. But So I enjoy having my intern associate working with me, and I have an educational psychologist that does testing, psychoeducational testing in my practice, and then I really enjoy connecting with other colleagues, which is how we met. And so I really try to be intentional about seeing at least a colleague, every week, seeing someone for lunch and connecting. And then for 2 years, almost 3 years now, have been running a free business networking group it started for therapists, but we've expanded to include just people who are self-employed, because we have now a chiropractor, a photographer, and you would be surprised, an acupuncturist, how great it is to diversify within that group. And it's a very diverse group of therapists and modalities. And we get together once a month downtown. This is a financial planner that I do it with. He gives us his office space. He is that kind of generous person too, who just wants to help other people in small business. And we meet and we have different topics every month. We're having a topic about marketing, the second part on marketing, about really bringing your true self into your work and how you present yourself. And we have everything from attorneys about how to incorporate, if you're going to become an S Corp, to people talking about taxes and accounting practices. And basically, we tell the people, if you want someone, we'll find somebody who can come and talk about that topic. But they're all topics to further self-employment and make us feel like we're not alone building our businesses, because it is hard to be a therapist and be a business owner. And you don't need to know everything. And what we found with these other professionals, like we bring the accountant in to say, this is the way you should be keeping your books all year. And the tax person comes in and says, this is what you need to think about, for taxes. And it's very, very helpful. And I think it's empowered a lot of people to feel more successful running their business.
Mm-hmm. And I bet less isolated in what they don't know or what they need to learn. It can feel like in the superpower method group I'm running right now, we just had our guest teacher come in who, I have one guest teacher in the program who comes in and just teaches everything about finances. And it's fantastic to learn everything from her about, what can you deduct and what's good financial self-care, setting up your systems. But as much as that is helpful, it's also really helpful in a group of people to just be able to ask what people think are stupid questions. And to
Absolutely.
say, we don't know this stuff. It's okay. None of us can know all of this stuff.
And I think that's a hard thing for a lot of us to do, because we are professionals in what we do, and we're supposed to be these people that have, insightful things to say to clients, and to be able to be in a room full of people where everyone's like, I'm not a lawyer, I don't know. So we're going to have the lawyer talk about X, Y, and Z. And then in the group, so we have someone present for an hour, and you can ask questions. And then we do a half an hour of 2 minutes. Everyone goes around and says what they do and what kind of client they're looking for. And, it's great to have a photographer in the group, because if you're looking for a headshot, now we know somebody. And it's different people every time. So I think that's what's fun about everyone, from people just finishing graduate school and starting out and looking for internships to people who've been doing this for a long time. So I think the more we support each other, the better off we're going to be successful in terms of not getting into situations that can be devastating when you're just trying to do your work as a therapist and now you've got an audit, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And you know who to ask. You've got colleagues, and even if you don't know who to ask, they're going to know who to ask.
Exactly. Yeah. Exactly. And it's I really believe, in this kind of time and age, that small business is really, the heart and soul of San Francisco in a lot of ways. And it's nice to be part of that. As we see sort of smaller mom and pop shops go away, there still are a lot of people in small business making it work and enjoying it. And there's a lot of autonomy being able to be self-employed, and people who want to have families or travel, you can do a lot in self-employment that you can't do in traditional employment.
That's right. I mean, I love it.
It's wonderful, isn't it? I mean, it's hard, but it's wonderful.
Yeah. I mean, and I realize it's not for everyone, but if you're someone who really, really values autonomy, freedom, being able to be creative and take your business in a lot of different directions, we can be so nimble in private practice and do so many different things.
And I think there are stages to it too, right? So this summer I'll have been licensed for 10 years. And so 10 years having a private practice. It's like I watch myself transition, and I think that that's the nice part. You can allow yourself to grow and become different as you hopefully are. I mean, I hope I'm maturing as I age, right?
Right. And you've really stepped into a mentoring role. Like it sounds like you've identified that as one of your superpowers is bringing people together and mentoring and collaborating.
Yeah, I really like that. I like connecting people. I've always been kind of a connector, and I like watching other people connect and get joy out of that connection and helping each other.
That makes me think of your practice. There are three of you in there right now.
So myself full time, and then I have an associate part time, and then I have the educational psychologist part time.
How did you know you wanted to bring in an educational psychologist?
Well, she's a very good friend of mine, and we started working together our first year for SFUSD. So I've known her a long time, since 2006. And I know the quality of her work. So when she left the school district, and I had seen a lot of things and read a lot of, reports over the years. I mean, I used to case manage hundreds of kids in the school district. And I knew that, a lot of people have to go get outside testing. And because they don't qualify within the school district, they're not low enough basically to qualify for support. And a lot of people just want to have some testing done because they have questions. They know their kid might not need so much extra support, but they want to understand the way they think or the way they learn. And so I called her up one day and I said, well, you're not working in the school district anymore, and you love San Francisco. She had to move out of San Francisco. And I said, want to come work for me and do this, and we can help families. And she's so good with kids and teens and explaining how their brain works to them in a positive way. And I think really has helped a lot of kids who come to our practice and teens understand that they're smart and capable, and that they can learn how to work with their brain in a way that will help them be successful. Instead of feeling like just because I learn different, just because I think a little differently, it doesn't put me in a place where I'm not going to be successful. Because I think there are a lot of unintentional messages with kids who, are slow to certain things, or they need something twice, or they're late readers, or they struggle with writing or thinking about how to put things together in a certain way, that then they come to a conclusion because they look around the room, and they'll all say this to you in therapy, I'm not smart. Why do you think you're not smart? Because I see everyone finish a test faster than me. Kids draw certain conclusions, and then when they get the information about, oh, my brain works this way, oh, it has nothing to do with whether I'm smart or not, then they can let that go and really focus on kind of their superpowers, right?
Yeah.
And find themselves.
Yeah. And you've got so many more ways to help families when you have that educational psychologist.
Exactly.
Have you ever had a low or scary moment in your business that you had to work through?
Oh, yeah. Nail-biting moments all the time when I first started my practice. Yeah. I started my practice part-time, and I did a lot of informational interviewing before I went into private practice. And I got some really good advice about how to start. And I knew some people in small business. And, I took clients. I took low fee clients, full fee clients. But I was really limited in what I could do in terms of my work. And then I went half-time into practice. And so when I was starting out, I had a full-time job. So it's not a nail-biting moment because you've got your full-time job. But as I grew my practice and then went from, I used to work all day Saturdays for 3 years and Wednesday nights. And then when I went into practice half-time, those are nail-biting moments where you've got to fill now like another day and a half. And then when
you're giving me flashbacks. This is
right.
Yeah.
And then when I went into my practice full time and left my job with the school district and left my benefits behind and all of that, that was definitely, a struggle that first year again. And I think that, therapists have to understand, and, when you're thinking about like setting your fees and figuring it out, you actually have to work backwards. You actually have to figure out, how much do I need to make to support myself or my family? And what does that look like on a hourly basis? And you go backwards as a year, you come up with a figure for a year, and then the month, and then you figure it out. And then you figure out, so what do I need to do to build at least 10% of my practice in sliding scale that way? And the bottom line is that when you get to be full time, the people you started out with that are sliding scale don't go away; they stay. And that's kind of a beautiful thing. And those are those clients that you really kind of appreciate. They almost, they kind of anchor you in who you are and where you've come from and the work that you've done. So, there are a lot of nail-biting moments. And what I would say is, you just have to keep going forward. You just have to know what you do and trust that you can actually say no to that client that you don't think you'd be the right fit for, not because you need the money or the slot, but because you'll get the right client who's for your practice if you refer to other people. So I often will say, I'm going to refer you to a colleague who specializes in this, and I don't take insurance in my practice. I couldn't survive if I did. But some people are in different situations. They have partners with health insurance and they don't have to kind of think about some of those things. So,
Yeah.
It just depends. And I think having a full-time practice, I find other ways to generate income now as well, through workshops. And I love, supervising my intern. And that's another thing. If you're going to take on an intern, you've got to pay the lawyer and you've got to do an employment contract and you've got to, pay for their space and, all of those things. So I think it's good to start out small if you're thinking about getting into private practice and get a feel for it. And then we had a money coach come talk to us and really get a sense of like, do you like being self-employed or do you like being employed?
Yeah.
And if you are self-employed, are you treating yourself like a valuable employee? This woman, Catherine, meant to come and talk to our group a couple months ago. And I found that just wonderful. It's like, am I treating myself as a valuable employee? Am I giving myself a raise? Do I give myself time off? Do I do those things? And chances are you might do them for everyone else that works for you, but not for yourself.
Yeah. And you're really the one that's going to stay. So you better treat yourself well.
Exactly. Yeah. So,
and one more, well, there's actually two more questions for you, but the next one is, if you could time travel to when you first started your business, is there any advice that you would tell the Maryellen of that time?
I think just to have less anxiety, like it would all work out.
It's going to be okay.
I felt so anxious all the time about, those bottom lines at the end of the month. And I think that I think I would have told myself it's okay to take time off. And it's okay not to work days and hours that you don't want to work. But in the beginning, you might have to do that. And that you can be okay with that. Because I think in the beginning, I was working at night and all day Saturdays thinking, am I going to do this forever? And so I think I would have liked to myself, nope, but you got to do it to get going.
Yeah, this is going to pass, but it's working for now.
Yeah.
It's worth it for now. Yeah.
Yeah.
And
I think, you don't realize this at the time, but how awesome it's going to be because you're going to get to meet. So I thought, if I go into private practice, am I ever going to see like my colleagues and see other therapists? And I've met so many people that I wouldn't have met if I hadn't been in private practice. And that's been awesome. You need to, I always say to people, like, you really need to know other people who are very different than you and who think differently and who do EFT and somatic and things that you are not trained in. And because these people are going to be so helpful and you're going to seem so much more knowledgeable if you know when to refer somebody to somebody who does what you don't do, and you have to feel completely okay with that.
Love that, Maryellen. Yeah, that you actually seem more knowledgeable when you know who to refer to and you know what you don't know. I think that's completely right. And the longer that we're therapists, like you and I have been at this a long time. And so we're not like in any way thinking we're supposed to know everything. But I think...
But I used to think I had to know everything. Yeah. And that's a big burden to carry.
Yeah, it's impossible.
Yeah. But I think that's part of our evolution of self, right? That we're younger and we think we have to know everything. And then we get older and we're like, what do we know?
So Maryellen, what is the best place for therapists to find you and throw compliments at you and get to know you?
That's very sweet. Well, the best way to find me is the website is sanfranciscofamilytherapy.com. And people can find me on LinkedIn. I'm more than happy to connect on LinkedIn. But yeah, and I'm always happy if anybody wants to, meet for coffee or have a phone call, or, I'm always happy to help other people. But I think really a great way would be just to come to our free networking group once a month. You get a lot of bang for your buck. You get to meet a room full of great therapists and other self-employed people, who want to help and be networking and help you in your journey.
Awesome. So people can find out about that by contacting you.
Send me an email or connect with me on LinkedIn. We meet at 350 Sacramento Street the first Thursday of every month from 10:30 to noon.
Awesome. Thank
Yeah.
you so much,
Oh,
Maryellen.
thanks, Annie. This has
Pleasure
been
to
fun.
connect. Yeah, for me too.
Yeah.
Thanks for listening to Therapist Clubhouse. We talked a lot about superpowers today, and you know that's my favorite topic. If you want to get more help with your superpowers, getting in touch with them, and learning to leverage them in your business, check out how we can help you over at coachingwithannie.com. I'll see you next week.
And just a little self-disclosure, I have a puppy and we're having a little bit of a rough morning.
Oh my God.
And because we're off schedule. And so she's not going in her crate and going to sleep. So I'm just going to sit with her in my lap